All right, so I have to show you this slide. That's the legal stuff over and done with. So as I said, my name is Nick King. I look after cloud marketing here at VMware. So a lot of the stuff you've seen in the last few days has been us looking at how we sort of simplify a lot of the messaging we have around what we're doing in cloud. But also the last really 3 or 4 years, VMware has been focusing on how we come together and bring together a cloud strategy that makes sense for you guys. And I think a number of different efforts we've had, and I think today with VMware Cloud and AWS, the stuff we're doing with our cloud providers, as well as all the technologies we're putting out around cloud services to support the infrastructure you guys have today, will be incredibly helpful. With me is Neil, Technical Product Manager. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm actually a former cloud architect with VMware, but just recently was acquired with OVH as part of that cloud move. So now I'm an OVH product manager helping to build that part of the cloud out as a service provider for VMware. So very tied into the technology, can help with the architecture, the technical details, because that's where I lived for years. So we'll dive into that a little bit later here.
Cool, thank you. So just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to cover through, we're going to talk a little bit about how we see VMware's cloud story coming together, just to give you an idea of all the different components we see. There's been a lot of announcements the last few months, and so I just wanted to spend some time to talk to you a little bit about how we think about those different components. Then we're going to go through a number of solution details, covering the VMware Cloud itself, Cloud Foundation, VMware Cloud on AWS, the cloud services, and then the cloud service providers. And then we'll circle back at the end and, as I said, have some Q&A. So there's a lot, obviously, and I think that's part of our goal today, is to kind of give you guys the rubric for all the different things that VMware's bringing to market, and also give you the sort of real-world partner perspective as well. So let's get started with VMware Cloud all up. I think one of the things that we have recognized as we looked at the cloud business and what was happening is really the way that most people manage applications today sits on top of a virtualized infrastructure. Many applications here. And what we realize as we talk to our customers is that all of our customers were looking at their application portfolios today and trying to understand what type of transition they need to go from. There's the real obvious one of doing nothing, which, in some mission critical scenarios, other scenarios, it makes a lot of sense to keep that and maintain an existing environment. But a lot of customers are going through these different scenarios. And what I'd challenge you guys to do is look at your applications you have today and see, does this require replatforming? What does that involve? If I'm going to lift and move an application around to a new environment, what's the easiest way to prepare for that? Another scenario is what we call multi-tier hybrid. This is one of my favorite buckets. It tends to include a lot of things here. This could be the extension scenarios where you might extend services from inside your own data center to another data center to a public cloud. This also includes edge and branch offices, so this is a growing segment that we will see more and more of. Refactoring, where you go and modify the app. This can often be a lot of heavy lifting, but there can be some good upsides here. We might refactor it for on-prem or the cloud. I'm hearing a lot of stuff like Apache web servers tend to go down this path. We refactor them from VMs to, say, containers to get that memory optimization. Obviously deploying directly to the cloud, where we're seeing people deploying directly to those scenarios. And then finally the replace scenario, which is replacing with SaaS. So as you can tell, there's a lot of different scenarios that we're kind of thinking about. But the good answer is, for us, we're really focused on how we give you consistent infrastructure, consistent operations around this. So when you kind of break that down, you end up with really 4 types of initiatives that we tend to break it down into. The first one is around modernizing your data center, making sure you've got that consistent infrastructure, consistent operations. You've thought about your governance, the understanding of operations that go behind that, making sure that your data center itself has virtualized network, compute, storage, and that really gives you the sort of first stage of being able to choose where to deploy your applications. Once you've sort of set that, then you start to work on scenarios which we sort of consider extending to the cloud. VMware Cloud on AWS is a good example of that, where you can use elastic DRS, move those services up and down, have low tide marks, high tide marks, and have those dynamically provisioning more resources. And then also I hear another scenario where people are migrating applications, using the extending to the cloud to sort of update their data center as they move or move data centers. The next piece is looking developed for the cloud. This includes applications that may be using microservices. We also hear a number of scenarios using cloud-native applications, so containers. We'll talk a little about some of those scenarios as well. And then finally, SaaS applications. And really that's another key scenario you often hear of does it make sense to take this application and move it to SaaS? So that sets up really the challenges we see today. I think all of us want to understand how we do this stuff faster. We want to understand how we take this to the cloud. But really the key for us is how you can scale that seamlessly. And a lot of the focus that I think we've got to look at is how do you build those applications to scale in the right way, but how do you also ensure that you can do it across your own clouds or public clouds. Now the next thing to think about is, sort of the riskless exposures. So for us, there's an element of like, how do you manage that cost and complexity, ensure you have that compliance. We often hear stories of people that sort of have developers that rush to the cloud and then have to look at how they employ compliance, make sure they can operationalize it. And a lot of what we're doing across VMware is, again, driving that consistency so that applications can be managed on both sides. And then lastly, there's this point around multiple clouds. Almost all the customers I'm talking to today that are starting to look at which public cloud provider or how they set their private cloud up, usually look at multiple cloud providers. So they may have a host that might be in Germany based on data sovereignty rules. They might want to use Google for its machine learning APIs. They might have Azure credits that means they can run stuff on Azure. And so there's a similar scenarios like how do you take advantage of these multiple locations? How do you get the best scenario from what you've got? So for us, the way we look at this is what I would call VMware cloud infrastructure. So building across Cloud Foundation, being able to then look at how that works on VMware Cloud and AWS. Obviously, cloud providers like IBM, OVH are examples of these providers that have that consistent infrastructure and operations. Really when you see that, what you're able to do is pick up a VM and really put it anywhere you like. And that gives you lots of optionality. And so we have this cloud provider network. It's about 4,000 different partners that you can take advantage of. And obviously with Cloud Foundation, you can do the same things in your data center. And then the other side of the coin is looking at what we'd sort of public cloud infrastructure as a service. So how do you call against these resources, take advantage of them, use them for, say, bursts, other types of technology. And this is the guys you'll know, so AWS, Azure, GCP, and the like. What you're seeing through the middle there are our cloud services we're bringing to market. And remember how I talked about the requirements like operations, I wanted to have the control for infrastructure. The way that we think about this is you really need 5 kind of characteristics or elements you have to look for. And really what you start with is understanding, do you have visibility of these applications? As applications are spawning in your own data center, in public cloud data centers, you really need that visibility. And so we're building a number of services that allow you to go through and discover, get that visibility and troubleshoot. Obviously, once you've got that, you want to have operations and automation, making sure that you can provision and deploy that on any cloud, your own cloud, public clouds, but also automate. As this stuff scales, as the increasing complexity, you want to start building scenarios that can self-heal these applications. Obviously, security is pretty key. We sort of are looking at how you can drive security both from your on-prem scenarios as well as what you do in the cloud. The unique thing that VMware has here is because we have the virtualized or the compute network and storage, we can actually see the profile of the application. So with app defense, we actually dive in and understand it. We'll show a little bit of that later on. And then finally, governance. If you look at what's happening with most countries now are having more stronger nationalized type privacy laws. And so you need to understand how you go and manage that type of governance. Can you make sure data doesn't leave Germany, for example? Will things like GDPR have an impact on the way your business runs, and looking at how you drive that compliance? And that really sets up the 5 principles for these cloud services that we have. Towards the end, we'll run through that, but what these services do is give you that consistency. And then finally, the cloud management platform, which is really vRealize. So when you bring all that stuff together, what you have is a consistent set of services, a consistent set of infrastructure, and consistent operations across that. And then the other thing, which is we announced yesterday VMware PKS. And what that is a Kubernetes-based container product that you can deploy on top of vSphere. And then it'll run its own Kubo instance with Bosch and then start to provision containers for you. Now the beauty with that is it's also self-healing, self-managing, so it will spin up all the VMs it needs. It'll treat vSphere as an IaaS, and then you can then provision those services to your developers. And they can go run containers on top of that Kubernetes scheduler. So really that gives you that operational control, ensuring you have container services running inside your infrastructure, and it really just works across vSphere as it usually would. And that then gives you the ability to deploy for cloud native as well as traditional applications where you use containers one side or the other, or deploy microservices. And the cool thing with PKS is you'll also be able to deploy functions as a service or microservices. So really what this means is that no matter what your developers or applications are requiring, across the stack you have all the different controls you might require. And obviously with Workspace ONE, you get the single sign-on controls, so if you have SaaS applications, you sort of round it all out. So a lot of our focus as VMware has been to bring all this technology together, but put it in a way that you guys can provide this infrastructure, these core services to developers, make sure you still have the same operations, same infrastructure, and keep all those policies and procedures you've had as you run your infrastructure in your data center. And it doesn't matter whether it's on-prem in your own data center or someone else's, you have that consistency. All right. So,
with that, let's jump in a little bit deeper and talk about what some of these solutions are. Because what we've been hearing is general confusion from some of the customers of the individual components. Great, we have a high level understanding of what they are, but what does it really mean? What are the pieces they build up? What are the individual solutions that they provide? So we're going to start off with the foundation. There's a reason it's called Cloud Foundation. Now, at the basis, and we've been hearing about this for over a year, so I'm going to assume that most of the audience has a general understanding of Cloud Foundation, what they're receiving from it. We'll go into just a little bit more detail here, but what I want to touch on first is that this is giving you hyper-converged. You're going to get your vSphere, vSAN, NSX together. And I've had customers ask, well, I'm going to be running in cloud, but why do I need NSX? Or I don't know if I'm ready for vSAN if I want that right now. Why do I have to get those components too? Maybe I just want vSphere. And the point is, if you're running in a cloud provider, you only have access generally to the compute resources in a way. You're going to be running vSphere in some form if it's on a VMware service provider platform. But the storage is going to be owned by the cloud provider themselves. So they're going to run and configure and manage most of that. Same with the network. The network, they're going to manage the equipment and the details and a lot of that. So you don't really have much control. But if you pull that back, and we can do that then in software, and we can bring that into more of the cluster, then that gives you back control as an administrator within one of those hosted private cloud environments. So this gives you the full package of the entire infrastructure virtualized. We wrap that in the SDDC manager, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in a second, but then we're going to keep that consistent with what you have on-prem. So in your private site, if you're running Cloud Foundation, then you're making sure that you're consistent across sites, across multiple clouds and multiple providers with the control of all the elements of those environments, and that you can then tie into some of these other features of the later cloud services platform options. So the key here is consistency of the hyper-converged stack. Now, really focusing on helping you to modernize, giving you that single stack, all those details that we already touched on. This is another quick illustration, but we'll move forward with here, because I think what's more interesting as part of this package is the SDDC manager. So this is the extra piece that's new that you're getting as part of this platform. What it's providing you at first is the speed of deployment. It's going to help handle the configuration, deployment, management of your entire stack. And beyond that, it's going to help with your continued compliance from a patching and management perspective. So the most interesting piece about this software for me is how we're managing packaging as a whole now. Now, it's not just as an admin patching vSphere, and then once it's ready, going then to NSX and eventually some of your own components and pieces. This handles patching from a fully vetted, VMware signed off single package together. So all of patching of your entire environment is now automated. It's all consistent. It is all completely signed off on the newest and greatest as best as we can. And then again, this running on-prem and in your cloud providers is going to give you that consistent space with consistent versions, with consistent security and patch levels across all areas. So foundation for all of your sites in this new cross-cloud world. Now, with that patching and the deployment, it speeds it up because all of a sudden you are automating what you have into a better platform that is made to do this. So at the core, in practice, when you're deploying, this is going to speed up deployment immensely of a standard rack, standard initial cluster. So again, leading back to this, it's the foundation. It is the common platform, the common piece, giving you control of your compute through vSphere, of your storage through vSAN, and of your network through NSX, with patch management and with consistency management through the SDDC manager. Great, so what do we build with this? Well, we take it over to a platform like VMware Cloud on AWS. So you're going to see a lot of those similar pieces here from this partnership, looking to help bring consistency, compatibility between your sites, and allowing you then to take advantage of other services. So VMware Cloud on AWS is going to give you that same package that we just talked about with vSphere, vSAN, and NSX, and we're going to be running it on the Amazon infrastructure. Now again, very popular announcement from last year's VMworld with the announcement that it's going live now, makes it even more exciting. And we then get to start taking advantage of some of these pieces together. So been through a bit of this. We'll try to fly through on this side a bit faster. But this is ESXi on dedicated hardware. It is a bare metal service to start with, and it is hyper-converged. So your storage is going to be primarily out of the gate handled from vSAN to give you the reliability and some of the control of your storage there as well. You will have access to the NSX features. That gives you the additional security with microsegmentation, the other fun features and pieces, even if you're not using it on-prem yet. Take advantage of that in the cloud, and you can do this adjacent to your Amazon services and give you the connectivity in from a VPC connection standpoint. Now, service overview, again, this is close to Cloud Foundation. So if you're familiar with Cloud Foundation, it's going to give you that same hyper-converged package from VMware on AWS services side by side, so you get that low latency connection into the AWS services with the VMware compatibility and the management of some of the VMware cloud services that we'll be talking about a little bit later here. This is going to be really exciting in the future as we start to expand even further too. So starting with the US West region, up around Oregon, and then spreading this out globally from there throughout the multiple regions of AWS, and then starting to tie more and more into services. So not only do you get to take advantage of some of the on-demand capacity, some of the flexibility that you can get. So what are you looking for from cloud? You're looking for agility and the cost savings generally, because you're purchasing services that are part of a larger scale deployment. And you can get them on demand when you need them. So we can get that alongside the other instances to then start to mix and match use cases. So with this, it's going to be best suited for your VMware compliant, VMware compatible workloads. Anything that's going to be that OVF, OVA type of format that you want to bring in from a migration service, this is going to give you an area that you can run that. And you can do it side by side with your smaller DevOps projects. So bring over your Active Directory services, your Exchange services that you may be running, your core security and other elements of your day-to-day business. And then alongside this, you can start to run with your small developer products and projects that need to run in more of that, just a little bit more agile instance-based sort of environment, or with the EBS type services or other elements that you're going to potentially get from here. Plus, you're going to get all of the benefits of a public cloud type of model. So your on-demand hourly billing, which is going to be a little bit flexible, spin it up when you need it, spin it back down when you don't. You get your additional services, you get multiple ways to purchase, but all through VMware. So it is a VMware run service, VMware supported service, VMware engineered service on AWS hardware. We're talking a little bit about the reach. So starting up there on the northwest side initially with that first GA offering, but then spreading globally from there with multiple regions that are online or coming online soon. So it gives you that global solution with a hyper-converged offering with the VMware stability, support, compatibility on a stack that's going to be on Cloud Foundation type of structure in the same way that you would be running on-prem or in other cloud providers. Speaking of, we have the VMware Cloud Provider Program. So this is a new title. It's going to seem a little strange. This is what used to be called vCAN, the vCloud Air Network. So it's recently been rebranded as recently as this week for VMworld. So what everyone out here would have known before as the vCloud Air Network is now the VMware Cloud Provider Program. And this is more consistent with the naming and the type of services that VMware is offering as a piece of this. And the key here is that the Cloud Provider Program is hosted vSphere. So it's going to be a private cloud or public cloud type of offering. It can be connected into public clouds directly if, say, you're running VMC on AWS. But it's going to be hosted by one of 4,000 current registered providers around the world. So this is going to be providers like OVH or IBM, with SoftLayer, Rackspace, a lot of the big names that you are used to hearing in that cloud hosting space, those in this sort of structure are going to be a VMware cloud provider partner around the world, global reach. So if you need governance, or not governance, data sovereignty is the better word for it. You need data sovereignty to run in a specific country with compatibility, but you don't have a business presence there. This is the solution to it. So you find a vetted, certified cloud partner through VMware, and you run your services in the location that you need. Now, not only that, but with the services that you're looking for. So let's go first to a bit of that map. I love this map. This is the current reach of services. So there may be countries, regions, areas globally that you need to get into, and we can now provide that sort of depth and breadth. Now, it's not just for standard services either. This is a larger network of providers that each have specialties to meet the individual needs that you're looking for. So they can be not just price competitive, but service competitive. The idea that you may need more or less managed services. Maybe you're looking for vSphere on bare metal to be able to run it, but you want full control of the stack. You need that ESXi root access. But then maybe you don't. Maybe you want that cloud provider that's going to take care of your patching, your general maintenance, and you just want the VMs. Or maybe you're going as high as a black box. You just need VMs, services to run, and you want to know that they are compatible with what you're running on-prem so that there's no lock-in. You already have vSphere, you're running it in your environment. You want another location to take advantage of some of the performance or other elements. This is a good way to be able to do that in a new region or area. I believe we have a question. Those are the different types of cloud providers that we have out there. So let me touch on that. The question was, what were the different types of dots? They, on that map, now I took off the key to it, but they were specifically pointing to the different types of cloud provider program services that are offered. Now these are badges that you can look up on the VMware Cloud Provider Program page. You can search by the badge type or the service type that you're looking for, and these providers again have been certified to run these types of clouds with VMware software through their own native data center. So you have IaaS with your basic local infrastructure. You have your hybrid cloud that allows a little bit more of a connectivity option for more of a hybrid cloud experience to connect back on-prem to what you have today and help you with a data center extension type of use case. We'll have Horizon DAS to give you that desktop as a service running on someone else's platform. We're going to have our DR as a service, so that would be typically a vSphere replication-based solution. It could be something like the hybrid cloud manager-based solution that's out there today. It could also be a third-party type of solution, but really for a warm standby of VMware workloads to help make that easier for you to provide DR services in a different region without having to have your own colo or such. Now beyond that, we also have the managed services provider. So some of our service providers specialize in additional services, consulting, help desk services, and so on for what you need. And they are, again, certified around the VMware stack and VMware solutions. So the idea is to use our website as a directory for ease of use, find the badge that you need, find the location that you need, and then you can start to talk to the providers to meet the reach or services or technological requirements of your company. Now with that, I have to point out, as in OVH Product Manager now, vCloud Air, which used to be the VMware hosted solution that was positioned in parallel to the overall vCAN network at the time before it became this VMware Cloud Provider Program. It has been acquired now by OVH. OVH is a global hosting provider. It is the largest in Europe today. So you may have seen them around. It's one of the largest providers you may not have heard of in the US. This is now a way for them to branch into the US and start selling services here with the future expansion of vCloud Air as part of their services and offering alongside the other pieces. So from a historical perspective, we've taken vCloud Air and it has been acquired by OVH, and that is now part of the service provider program. And side by side with 4,000 service providers to give you vSphere-based services worldwide, alongside items like potential just bare metal, public cloud services, an example here hosted on OpenStack or other such, to mix and match to be able to meet the needs for your business. Now with that, I'll hand it back to talk about the glue that'll help hold them all together.
Thanks. So remember I talked about the services across the middle here. So what I'm going to do is take you through a bit of a tour through what those services look like. So there's 7 services overall. I'm going to cover 6 of them today. The discovery service, which itself is, as it sounds, it goes through it, sort of the first step to going through and instrumenting and discovering what's going on in your network. And then there's also network insight and cost insight. So they kind of play off the discovery service, but then are able to drill down and start to understand network insight into the network traffic. So you can see where the different servers and different connections are coming from, what that traffic entails, what's happening at the packet level. Also start to identify and use it for troubleshooting. Cost Insight allows you to figure out the cost of different pieces of infrastructure you're using and get that real crisp view of like where you should put different applications. NSX Cloud, which allows you to do micro-segmenting, secure networking, and then connect up multiple clouds. So I think that today is for both AWS, and they're just showing parts of Azure support for that as well. App Defense, which is a really cool security technology which looks at the application profile, sort of takes like a fingerprint of that application, then looks to see if that application might change, and then you can have reactive measures that go against that. Wavefront, which is a new member to the family, which really focuses on like application telemetry. What we see a number of times now is we're seeing people use Wavefront as a way of managing their applications and then combine it with Network Insight, and you sort of do this sort of forensics between the behavior of the application and the behavior on the networking. And then obviously Workspace ONE, which gives us the sort of compatibility across any device in those scenarios. But today I'm just going to focus on these top 6. So first up, let's look at discovery. What this discovery service goes and does is it goes and interrogates different connections, different services. What you can see it doing here is looking at AWS, Azure, and on-prem. Our plan is that this will continue to add new different types of services. And it really gives you a holistic view of the different cloud services you have. Once you've got this, you get an idea of what's happening for your cloud resources and different places are for projects. I think my mic's fading a little bit.
Yeah, it might be losing battery.
I'll keep talking, and if I stop, I might just
Okay. Possibly switch that on.
So let me know if it starts fading out too much. And so then the other thing we look at here is it's continuously looking and automating the inventory. So you could leave this running and just constantly going back and say, hey, this stuff's been provisioned. Often with so many users on your networks, you might not always have visibility, so this is just a good way to keep tabs of it and have that quick summary. Next up is Network Insight. So what you can see here, if you look across, you can see the different types of connectivity, where the different CPU performances are, what the load is of your different networks. And this is really about how you plan and manage security across clouds. You know, you can analyze traffic flow between AWS and your private clouds. You can understand what's happening with the application dependencies. And it really gives you a good set of insights to go and drive your micro-segmentation strategy. This is a really good starting point for that. The other cool thing is you can quickly troubleshoot issues with this tool. So it really gives you a full 360-degree view, and it gives you visibility to both, you know, your AWS and your SDDC cloud infrastructure. It looks across both physical network devices as well as AWS VPCs, and then gives you the ability to like look also into those security groups. So it's really designed to go across multiple locations to pull out that information. The other thing is often you'll see sometimes connectivity drops will happen as you're going between virtual and physical networks, and this same tool allows you to figure out where those network interruptions might be occurring. And then the final thing is that you also can manage and troubleshoot NSX with this tool. So it gives the ability to like go through and manage those tools, understand what's going on, and sort of port that your networking strategy from there. And as far as like a user interface goes, you don't have to have hardcore networking experience to go through and drive this and understand what's going on.
I think this is the one that we see people geeking out about most is part of the overall platform. Because of how easy it is to look at what's happening in the environment, get that quick visual representation of it per service, per host, per VM as needed to be able to secure that across multiple sites.
Totally. Yeah. It's really cool to play with. So next I want to talk about the Cost Insight. So I think with this tool, what you start looking at is where are your different costs coming from? Particularly as you go across multiple cloud providers, have multiple deployments, you want to understand what those things are actually costing you. And sometimes you can get sort of cost blind spots. You might know what's been spun up, how much that's costing you, or you might have a rogue server going and consuming lots of extra resources. This gives you that comprehensive visibility so you don't get surprised with that. But also you can start to plan out and say, hey, does it make sense for me to move this workload on-prem or move it to the cloud? What makes more sense one way or the other? It gives you a systematic approach to cost control. So you can go through and say, hey, this is what happened month over month. You can understand if there's sort of peak seasonality and what that might look like. And then next year you can use it to build, say, business cases where you put on additional servers in your own data center or you go and spin up another location. And then the other thing is you can look for what we sort of call cloud waste, which is sometimes you have instances running which aren't doing much that you sort of forget about. And this gives you an idea, a quick way of tracking those down, making sure you're constantly optimizing your cost. NSX Cloud, which is another great service, this really gives you a single pane of glass for management. And it gives you this way of having consistent cloud IT and scaling your operations, but it also gives you a way of standardizing the way your networking works. You can have policies in your own data center and in NSX Cloud which give you that consistency of networking. And that's really key. It allows you to optimize how you drive those connections between clouds with your own clouds, and so that ability to sort of secure and connect those is really key. It does allow you to have what I consider to be sort of scalable microsegmentation, which means that you can have sort of easy controls over between application instances. You can define a policy once and then ship it and be done. So that ability to sort of duplicate those rules, scale it, is also very cool. And then the final thing is using overlay network. It gives you the ability to use precise control and gives you to understand of like where the traffic flows are going, what IP is happening, and just see what's happening overall in your network. So it gives you that level of like insight that you need, particularly managing multiple applications. Next up is app defense. You've heard me talk a little bit about this. This is really what we would consider to be sort of the threat detection for data centers. And so what it does is understands what an application looks like, takes that fingerprint or the intended state, and then it looks for changes in that intended state and then can report those back. So in this example, what you can see going on here is you can see that these are different services we're monitoring. So maybe a service starts or stops and changes size. Maybe someone comes and puts files on that server. This actually has another interesting side effect we've noticed is often other administrators might come in, adjust the server, and you can see if that behavior's happened as well. So it gives you a way of sort of maintaining compliance over certain servers. You can then, you can then also have automated threat response. So when a threat's detected, App Defense can call against NSX, change the networking and say put that server in a DMZ or raise it sort of a upper level in security, isolate it potentially from the internet, and then you can go through and investigate. And then when you have that increased isolation, it does reduce the attack surface. So if something does happen, say malware does get into your network, that device, that server can be isolated, or the other services around it can also be isolated from it. So you have much greater control. And often with heuristics, you're looking for change over time, but because this does that stamping at the very beginning, there's no need for that long time scale to get the correct heuristics. Moving on to Wavefront. So Wavefront, you can see here, carries literally thousands of touch points per second as it manages the applications. So this is grabbing all this data, but it also has this really wonderful correlation engine. So you can say, identify where, say, a service is changing, click on that service, it'll drill down, but then you can run a correlation engine, and it'll look for other services or other application data points that might have also changed. As you dive into the data, you can usually see which application, what server it's from, and then you kind of can go back to, say, network insight and begin to get that understanding. This also is very suitable for developers as well. A lot of the customers that use this today are primarily looking at how to service their applications, but also on the infrastructure side. So we're seeing folks use this tools to manage even their own infrastructure. So it works on both sides. The cool thing here is it gives you sort of real-time metrics, and it does it at scale. So you're able to query this, render it, look for anomalies, and analyze trends. And you also can set up to give you alerts based on those types of anomalies. So you might say, look for certain correlations, and it will report back those for you. It gives you sort of a first pane of glass. So rather than just single pane of glass, this is the fastest way to kind of go troubleshoot, see the real time of your application, and make decisions over those. And then the cool thing with this is I talked about having both sides. This is really sort of the way of starting to enable DevOps. So your infrastructure teams, your developers start to see more. You have a single data source you can work from and start to answer questions together and solve things. So by common tooling, we often see as the first step to sort of working close with developers and infrastructure. And then finally, it gives you the ability to customize particular dashboards based on domain knowledge. So say you have a series of mission critical applications, you can go and define that dashboard and then share it out with different groups and have that single place everyone goes and reports from. So let's bring it all together. So here, as we bring it all together, you can see us here at the services we put across the top, looking also at the way we bring together VMware's cloud infrastructure. As we talk through the different types of elements you might have in your own data center, how that works with VMware Cloud AWS, really what we're trying to drive that consistency all the way from your own data center to partner data centers and into public clouds. With the cloud services, you'll see us constantly adding more services here, thinking about how we can enable that consistency across your operations. And then at the top here, looking at how we can provide those applications to bring it all together. So we're really trying to provide a consistent, scalable, sort of end-to-end way of managing your applications, providing that infrastructure, giving you the tools you need to go do that. But really what's important here is the stuff we've been doing together for the last 15 years applies to what's happening in the future. So the policies, the operational controls, the way you scale, the way your teams are used to working can apply as you go into the cloud. And that's really key for us, I think, because all that intelligence, all that understanding you have of how your application runs, you want to be able to use these new compute resources, these new economies of different platforms. But you don't want to throw that stuff out. You don't have to go rewrite all that stuff. And sometimes the people that came up with some of the early stuff have probably left the organization. So that consistency is really key for us. Would you add anything to that?
Actually, no. I think you covered it cleanly here. That we built this solid foundation across all the services, across the providers, from left-hand side when you're going from private all the way through public side. And then we're starting to build this, really it's an abstraction above it in a way. It looks very close to what we saw 15 years ago in data centers. So we started to pull up and we unified the base platform of hardware by providing this virtualization, that abstraction layer on top of it. And now we're starting to unify virtualization and some of those tools across the platforms from on-prem through wherever it runs, even through the public providers, by providing this other abstraction layer to help manage it from a higher level. So we're helping to make things easier as we jump up. And I don't know if anyone caught the panel earlier. There were a number of vice presidents from a group of companies. We had CenturyLink, OVH, Rackspace, and IBM all represented for talking on a multi-cloud world. And this idea that all of the leads of these companies agreed that it's no longer even a single cloud world. You can't simply trust on a single provider and a single ecosystem. Business is so complex, so diverse these days, that you need to branch out for the individual projects to go to the providers that make sense for your needs, for the given requirements of your projects, your long-term initiatives, what you have, and that likely is going to be spread across multiple partners and an on-prem site. And you need a way to tie that all together and to do that in a unified way, and that is with a consistent platform and with a consistent layer of management over top.
Great. The other thing is that if you go to cloud.vmware.com, you'll see us starting to bring together these servers and having, as the services come to market, there's one place you go to, so you sign in once and you'll get all these different services. That place also has all the information on all the different products we've announced on this cloud platform and these cloud components, as well as links to find cloud providers that might be in your space. But I think one thing that often people forget is that with VMware Cloud Foundation, you can deploy this same technology in your data center. And that's always been key for us, is that we want to make sure that you have that same ability to do elastic compute, build these pieces together, and have that in your own data center if you need that option. So with that, I think we'll open up for Q&A.
Yeah, the hope is that helps, tying back to the first point with clearing cloud confusion. There were a lot of products, a lot of initiatives within VMware, and with all the partners working together. And then hopefully this gives you the larger picture of the story of what we're trying to build here and the unified direction that it's all heading in.
Great. Any questions, guys?
So we do have a microphone in the center, and we're here to help.
Confusion cleared.
Yeah, all right.